Hello, I had a recent series where I showed how to write an expert advisor from beginning to end. I took it very slowly, step by step, and that expert advisor was based on a price breakout, so it didn't use any indicators. And I did mention at some point during that series that I would come back and show how to write expert advisors using indicators. So today I'm showing how to write a very simple expert advisor just using an indicator. I will be using a lot of the functions and techniques from the earlier series, so I'll leave a link in the description where you can find the playlist for that series. For this video I've chosen a very simple strategy. I only wanted to use a single indicator to begin with, and I may produce further videos later that have multiple indicators, but I wanted to keep this to a single indicator. So I've chosen the very basic RSI strategy, and that simply says to sell at overbought and to buy at oversold. Now, this is a basic RSI overbought oversold strategy. I do not recommend this strategy. I don't even suggest this strategy. If you use this alone, you're almost guaranteed to lose. But it is not a bad strategy to demonstrate the code, and so the only reason I'm using it here is because it is a good demonstration of the code writing. In summary, the strategy is that we buy when the RSI moves from above the overbought line to below the overbought line, sell when the RSI moves from below the oversold line to above the oversold line. I'm only going to be trading once per bar, so I'm going to be comparing the RSI values from bars 1 and 2 to look for that crossover of the overbought and oversold lines. And I'm not doing any checks intra-candle. I'm going to be exiting either on a fixed stop loss and take profit, so there'll be inputs for the stop loss and the take profit, or I'll also exit if the RSI enters the opposite side of the zone. So if it enters the oversold zone, I will close any sell trades, and if it enters the overbought zone, I will close any buy trades. And there'll only be one trade open at a time, so I'll have a check to make sure there is not an existing trade before opening the next trade. I have the MetaTrader 4 editor open here. I've already created a folder here, Indicator Expert RSI, underneath my Orchard folder, and I've created an MT4 file, Indicator Expert RSI, here in that folder. And I've already filled in a lot of the template stuff for this. So just a comment here at the beginning, property strict, which I always use for MetaTrader 4, and then the copyright link and version numbers. Here I've added an enum for the type of volume calculation, and this was shown in the earlier series of videos, which are linked below. So this will depend whether I want to calculate my lot sizing based on fixed lot sizes or a percentage of equity. I'm going to have some inputs, but I haven't filled anything in here. And now I just have the onInit, onDinit, and onTick functions, and there's nothing there yet. Before I start filling in the detail here, I'm just going to add in some of the general purpose functions that I have shown many times before. I'll just put them in here and talk about them quickly and then move on. The first function I have is pips to double, and you would have seen this before, but I've made a slight change. So the function pips to double takes a symbol and number of pips. Now a pip is generally the second or fourth decimal place, and some currency are actually quoted to 3 or 5 decimal places. So this simply says if the number of digits is 3 or 5 for the symbol passed in, then pips equals the number of pips multiplied by 10. So if you quote a 5-digit currency, then pips is 10 times the smallest decimal place. And then I just return value equals pips multiplied by the size of a point. So a point is typically the last decimal place, but not guaranteed. So I actually capture that from the symbol info double and return the value. The difference that I've got here that you may not have seen before, I've got another copy of the function pips to double, which just takes in a number of pips. And all that does then is fill in the symbol as the default chart symbol. So if you simply want to do pips to double for the chart, you can just pass in number of pips. And if you want to specify it for a different chart symbol, then you can specify the symbol and the number of pips. And then the next utility function I have is new bar. You would have also seen this many times before, but I've made a slight change here again. This is my new bar function, and all I've done is add a symbol and a time frame and a current time to the arguments. And notice this current time is by reference, so that if I make a change inside this function, it gets passed back. And all that does then is compare now, which is the time from the chart symbol or from the specified symbol and time frame for bar number 0. And if the current time is equal to now, so current time is the one that was passed in, it returns false because there's been no change. And if it's not the same, then I set current time equal to now. Remember, this was passed by reference, so that will go back as the new value and then return true. So using this version of isNewBar, it's up to the calling function to remember that current time to know if this is a new bar or not. But to make it compatible with the earlier versions and easier to use, I also have the isNewBar function that takes no arguments. It maintains its own static date time, current time, and just calls that isNewBar function, passing in the chart symbol and period and that current time. So now back to the inputs, and I need a number of inputs for this RSI strategy. First, to specify the RSI, I need an RSI period and an applied price. These are the two standard inputs to calculate the RSI, but then I want to know the levels for the overbought and oversold. So the defaults for these are 14 for the period, closing price for the applied price, 70 is the overbought, and 30 for the oversold level. I said this would have a fixed take profit and stop loss. I'm just defaulting the pips for those to 10 pips each. And then, as usual, there's a magic number. 23, 23, 23 is my default here. A comment, the RSI levels, and input risk. Now, this is where I said, if you look at the risk type here, it can be either fixed lots or it can be equity percent. That's from the enum here. So if you specify fixed lots, then this is 0.1 lots. And if you specify percent, then this is 1/10 of 1% of equity. I also have two global variables, stop loss and take profit, and that's because I'm entering stop loss and take profit here in pips, and I'm going to convert them one time during initialization into actual values. So now that brings me to the onInit function. The first thing I want to do there is validate that these inputs are correct, or that there's nothing inconsistent about the inputs. So I have a function called validate inputs, and I'll just write that now. I'll put it here after onTick and before the general purpose functions. So here's the validate inputs function, and it follows a fairly standard format. I set a success variable to true, and then I perform a test on each of the inputs that I want to check. So in the first one here, I have the RSI period, and if that is less than 1, then that's an error because the period must be greater than or equal to 1. So if I get an error, then it's just the alert for that, and I set the success to false. So by doing this, rather than simply returning, I'm able to test the rest of the inputs, and so you get all of the error messages at one time, rather than fix one problem, start the expert again, and then see another problem. I test the stop loss pips. If they are less than 0, now 0 is a valid stop loss, because that just means there is no stop loss, but it can't be negative. The same for take profit pips. 0 is valid, but anything less than 0 is not valid. And then the risk, again, cannot be less than or equal to 0. You can't have a 0 risk. Whether it's fixed lots or percentage of equity, you simply can't trade at 0 lots. And then at the end of all of this, I return that success variable. So going back to onInit, if validate inputs returns false, so if not validate inputs, then I just return that the parameters are incorrect. And once I've passed that, I'm going to set these two global variables that I have. So stop loss equals pips to double of the input stop loss pips, and pips to double of the take profit pips for take profit. So once I've done that, I can simply use stop loss and take profit without worrying about any further conversion in the code. And that's all for the onInit function, and then I can simply return init succeeded. onDinit has nothing for this expert, and so then it's down to onTick. First check, I'm only going to be trading on a candle close. So if this is not a new bar, then return. And now I'm going to actually retrieve those RSI values. So to do this, I'm declaring an array called RSI values, and I'm going to be holding the values. I need vars 1 and 2, but as I've said here in the comment, I'm also getting bar 0, just because that makes this 3 elements long, and I can match those up with bar number 0, 1, and 2 on the chart. And then I call a function get RSI values, passing in this array, and then this get RSI values function will populate that array with the RSI values for bars number 0, 1, and 2. And I'm going to go now and create that function. I'll put it in here just ahead of the general purpose functions. So get RSI values, receiving the array, and remember this is passed in by reference because it's an array. I'm running on the chart symbol and time frame. Buffer number is 0. Now I could simply specify this in the call to the RSI function, but I just find it's more readable to actually set it as a variable. So RSI has only one buffer, so that's going to be buffer number 0. I'm going to start at RSI value 0 or RSI index 0, and I want 3 values back. That's 0, 1, and 2. I array resize RSI values for count, which is this number, and that means that the RSI values array will be large enough. And then I simply for int I equals 0 while I is less than count, I plus plus, RSI values I equals, and the I RSI function from MetaTrader 4 takes the chart symbol, chart period, or I'm using the chart symbol in the chart period, the RSI period from the inputs, the RSI applied price from the inputs, and I want the RSI value for position number I. So that just populates the array, and then I just return true. Back to onTick. And the next thing I want to do is count how many trades are already open. I said that I would only have one trade at a time, so I've got a function that I'm going to use to count the number of open trades. First I initialize position count, and this is also an array, and that's because in this one call to the count positions function, which I'll also write in just a moment, I want to capture the count of buy and sell trades. So count positions, passing in the chart symbol, the magic number, and that position count array. So I'll go down and write this count positions function now. Again, I'll put this just before the general purpose functions. Count positions, string symbol, magic number, and position count. And you'll see here I'm not using the chart symbol. This is a general type of function that I use a lot. So I pass in the symbol and I pass in the magic number rather than using the inputs or the chart values. First thing is to array resize position count so that it has 2 columns. And I initialize it with array initialize so that I begin with a 0 value in each column. And then simply for int I equals orders total minus 1. So orders total gives me the total number of orders, and minus 1 gives me the index of the last order. While I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. So I'll step backwards through all of the orders. If not, order select by index, I, symbol, and magic. Now this is also a custom function, and I'll show that in a moment as well. But this function will select order position I, compare the symbol and the magic number, and return false if the symbol and magic don't match. So that way I can easily continue if this returns false. And continue will simply go back to the next iteration of this loop. If I get to this point, position count, order type, although it's an enum, which tells me it's order type buy or an order type sell, those are actually integers, 0 and 1. So position count, order type, plus plus, and that just counts it up inside that element. And then the final return statement is position count 0 plus position count 1. So this function returns as an integer the total number of positions plus inside this array the number of buy and sell positions. And I'm referring to them here as positions mainly because of compatibility with MetaTrader 5 and maintaining a common naming convention. So positions in this sense ignore any buy stop or buy limit or sell stop or sell limit. These are only buy and sell. Let me write the order select by index, and maybe that will explain it a little further. I'll just put it here. So order select by index, I said I'm passing in the index number, the symbol, and the magic number. Order select is a standard inbuilt function. So if not order select and it takes arguments index, I'm selecting by position and I'm selecting from open trades. So if that fails, then I return false because I couldn't select that particular trade. Then I compare the order symbol with the passed in symbol, and if that doesn't match, I also return false. The same thing using order magic number and return false. And then, because I only want to select buy and sell and not any limit or stop orders, if order type is not type buy and order type is not type sell, I also return false. If I get through here, then I just return true. So that completes the count positions, and then back to onTick. And the next step here is to close any positions. I said one of the features of the strategy is that it will close any positions if the RSI value goes into the opposite overbought or oversold. So if the position count for buy, if I have some buy trades open, is greater than 0, and values 1 is greater than or equal to overbought, then it's gone into the overbought range. And let me just wrap this around. Then I call a function close all, passing in the chart symbol, the magic number, and order type buy. The sell is exactly the same, but here I'm looking at position count order type sell, and if the RSI value 1 is less than or equal to RSI oversold. Remember, I'm looking at RSI values 1. If I look at RSI value 0, I'm getting the current RSI, which as the price changes during the currently open bar, it may go in and out of overbought and oversold several times. I only want to close these trades if the RSI closes inside that overbought or oversold range. And so that's why I'm only looking at bar number 1, which is the bar that's closed. Now this close all function, that's another custom function, so I will also write that now. Again, just before the general purpose functions. Close all, symbol, magic number, and an order type. I use this bool success equals true, and that's going to be the return value from this function. It returns a boolean. This is the standard loop that I use when I'm working through orders. For int I equals orders total minus 1, while I is greater than or equal to 0, I minus minus. And unless I've got a very good reason, I always go backwards with I minus minus. If not order select by index, that's the function we've already seen, continue. So if I can't select, I just go around to the next iteration of the loop. If the order type is not equal to type, so remember that this function only checks that it's a type buy or sell, doesn't check for a specific type, so I've added that check in here. And then success, ampersand equals, that's the same as saying success equals success and the result from order close for the order ticket, order lots, order close price. So those are the arguments to close and order. So if the order closing is successful, then success will remain as whatever it was at the last iteration, and in the end I just return success. So if any of these order close fails, success will be returned as a false. Now in my case there should only be one trade at the most that I am closing, but just in case, this is a general purpose function, as I said, and it would loop through and close all trades that match the symbol and magic number. So again, in on tick, and the only thing left here is to open new positions. Open new positions if none are already open. As I said, I only open one at a time. So if the position count for the buy type is equal to 0, I don't have anything open. If RSI values 2 is less than or equal to oversold, and RSI values 1 is greater than oversold. So it was in oversold territory at bar number 2, and it's now outside oversold territory in bar number 1. So I've exited the oversold, and then I just open position for an order type buy, and the conditions for sell are the same. Order type sell equals 0, but here RSI values 2 greater than or equal to overbought, and values 1 less than overbought. And then I call open position with order type sell. And this is yet another custom function, so we'll go and see that one now. I will put the open position next after the close all function. And it's a little bit long. I won't be able to get all of that on the screen at one time. But it is passed in a type, which is an order type. I set up 3 working variables: price, stop loss price, and take profit price. Now I want to make sure I get the latest information, so I'm using MQL tick and calling symbol info tick, passing in the chart symbol and this tick variable. And tick is a structure of type MQL tick. So this will populate tick with information about the most recent price information on the most recent tick for this supplied symbol. If that's unsuccessful, then I just don't have valid information or no current data, so I simply return false from this function. Bring that back across. I don't know why I had all those extra spaces there. And now, as I say, set price values based on the type. If the type is an order type buy, then price is tick.ask. Now, one of the reasons for calling this symbol info tick, I have refreshed all of that information, and so this is the most recent available ask price. And then the stop loss price is just price minus the stop loss amount, and that's the global variable that was calculated earlier. And take profit price is price plus take profit. If it's not an order type buy, it must be a sell, and in that case I use tick.bid, getting the bid price, and stop loss price is price plus, and take profit is price minus. Scroll that a little. I'm just going to normalize the prices here in case there's some reason why they are invalid. And that's just the standard normalized double, passing in the price, the stop loss price, or the take profit price, and the number of digits for the current chart symbol again. And then volume, because I give you two options for calculating volume, I call a function get volume, where I pass in the risk type, the input risk, and the stop loss amount. So this is not a stop loss price, this is the amount of stop loss. So now I'll write the get volume, and there are several functions in here. So here are the volume functions, and these were all described in the earlier series, so I won't spend too much time on them. There's the risk type, which is either fixed lots or equity percent. If the type is fixed lots, then I can simply return normalized value of this risk amount because you've already specified the fixed lots in the input, but you could specify an invalid decimal, and that's why I'm calling this normalized volume, which is a function that's a little further down. If the type is equity percent, then again I'm calling normalized volume, but on the result of get volume equity percent, where I'm passing in the risk and the loss. Remember that loss is the stop loss amount. So the get volume equity percent, I get the account equity with account info double. The risk amount then is the equity multiplied by the risk. Then I need the tick value, tick size from symbol info double. The total number of lost ticks is then the total loss amount here divided by the size of a tick. So that's how many ticks you're prepared to lose. And then the volume is the risk amount, the amount in your deposit currency, divided by the number of lost ticks multiplied by the value of each tick. And I can see that I've actually doubled up here. I've got volume equals normalized volume there, and then I'm normalizing again here. You could remove one of those, and then I just return the volume. The normalized volume function is here because each symbol has a specification of the maximum volume you can trade, the minimum volume that can be traded, and the step or the increment between each volume amount. So typically, if the minimum volume is 0.01, the step would also be 0.01, but there's no guarantee of that, so you need to account for that. So I do capture the max, the min, and the step here with symbol info double, and the arguments are symbol, volume, max, min, and step. Then the result, I'm math round volume, which is passed in here, divided by step. So that's the number of step increments multiplied by the size of a step. So rounding the number of increments, multiplying that by the size of each step. And that gives me the rounded value of volume. But if result is greater than max, then I just say result equals max. And if it's less than min, in this case I'm setting result equals min. You may prefer to say if it's less than min, then result equals 0. And then return result. And I think that is everything. Compiles correctly. And as I'm trying to keep this to a short video, I won't run this through the strategy tester. You can do that yourself if you like. But as I said, this is not about showing you the strategy. It's about showing you the techniques for writing the code. So that's all I have for this MetaTrader 4 version. And if you want to see the MetaTrader 5 version, when that is released, there will be a link in the description of this video where you can find the MetaTrader 5 version. Hope this has been useful to you. If you have found it useful, then click like, click subscribe, and until next time, thank you for watching.